When life punches you in the face, it's easy to want to hide and back away and even run. But we were made to fight. Welcome to Wild Songs. I'm feeling spicy today. I'm so freaking bummed for this episode. Here's the deal, guys. I'm super brand new to this podcasting world. I don't even know what I don't know yet. So I'm having fun figuring out how I want to go about each week. Sometimes we might be knee deep in songwriting and music theory and the creative process. And other episodes, like last week, we might be doing more theology or philosophy. The kind of songs you're going to hear on this podcast are not easy to come by. And sometimes they're not easy to listen to. And what I mean is they might actually require some things from you. Imagine that. So I'm not going to put anything on here that I don't believe is raw and authentic and has some of that wild nature to it. Let's dive in. The song for this episode is The Lion and the Bear. And first off, I mentioned music theory, which I love teaching. So can we geek out for a little bit on melodies? I actually use this song as an example in my Cultivated course. And my clients say, man, the melody week is like drinking from a fire hydrant. So hey, if you're a songwriter, you'll enjoy this. And if not, hey, we're still going to help you. You're going to hear music differently. All right, so first I want to look at the melody of the verse. I want this to have this dreamlike quality to it. It's floating down like this dream. It's descending here in a story. This is God speaking to David. So right away, I want to make this connection that your melody is speaking something, and we want to get the feeling of the melody to carry the quality of the lyrics. I want to encourage some songwriters out there to think about creating a story with your melody, having some arc, some length to it. This is not just a 6 or 7 note idea. But with inside of that, you have this little theme. And this is the idea I want to get across today is motifs. When you're listening to music, there are little teeny motifs, there are little ideas inside of songs that find their way through different parts. And inside this verse, you have this little motif here. Do 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 do. Now this is going to find its way into the intro of the song. It's in the verse. It's in the instrumentation here in the bridge. And it's in a lower and higher octave when I get to really the core that goes beyond words. It's not just thrown together. This is purposeful. There's intent to it. It has meaning to it. Now, another quick thing I want to do with melodies here is the power of contrast. I have a lot of movement on this main verse melody. So I'm going to contrast that in my bridge with pull me closer to you. These longer notes, I'm in a different range and I'm getting a different feel. I'll talk about this later in the podcast, but that sense of pulling, of drawing in and really kind of questioning who's speaking here. So as you listen to the song today, visualize this. Keep this stuff in mind. See where you hear these things come out. All right, enough melody stuff. In last week's episode, I mentioned getting the right balance of masculine and feminine energy. And speaking of blending the two, man, let's look at a legit artist of artists, David. This is a badass warrior, brutal. And he's also this harpist, this tender poet with words that only a sensitive, vulnerable, intuitive artist can make. And then he's this king, this leader, this visionary with strategies and plans and a work ethic. And then he's this seeker of beauty and a dreamer and someone whose imagination is alive. David's life was like a symphony. A beautiful melody woven together with triumphs and tragedies and everything in between. His story is dramatic. Now, this song is a song of intimacy, of experiencing God. Charles Spurgeon talks about how experience doesn't come to people if they sit around. Even though David was young in years, he was old in experience because he jumped in. Spurgeon says he did what he was called upon to do with holy daring. And in so doing, he learned the faithfulness of God. Many men have lions and bears, but no experience. Be alive and get something out of all that happens around you. So what is he saying here? He's saying, man, go kill your lions. Go kill your bears. There's plenty of lions and bears around if you lift your eyes up. Well, what are these things? Well, these are real, tangible events and circumstances in your life. They're not just spiritualized, philosophy, ramble, jamble, jingle, jangle. This is boots on the ground, stuff that happens to you that's designed to want to take you out or designed to want to crush or destroy the very things that you love. When I think about my own life in this last year or two, it's been a bear. There's been a lot of trials and depression, and there's been all these external things happening to us, which aren't our making. A tree falling out of the house, the car crash, this thing going wrong, my wife's in the hospital. You list all these things. And I remember kind of getting to a point. It was about 6 months ago. I was talking with one of my business mentors, and I was telling her, man, I just picked up my wife that morning from the hospital, and it's been a long journey with her health, and I just feel exhausted. I just feel like I've been punched in the face this last year, boom, boom, boom. And she talked about needing a space for recovery. Kyle, you need a space for healing. And I kid you not, an hour after that conversation, I was driving to the gym to work out, and this guy came barreling over the hill behind me, smashes into my car, off the road, over the hill, and I'm boom, boom, hitting these trees. It was crazy. And I could have died that day. And it was in this moment, I felt so alive. Like I just fought a bear. Satan can throw his best stuff at me and it's not going to work. All these attacks and these things coming against me, it's comical. But I felt like I'd won. It's weird to say, but I was just confident that I was in God's hands. My life was wrapped up in him. And that's the voice of God in this chorus that says, I held you like a weapon in my hands. You're in my hands, Kyle. But that's not just a nice protection statement, hey, you're safe. No, it's hey, I'm going to use you as a mighty weapon against darkness, so get ready to be in the fight. And in that fighting, here's the cool twist. On one hand, we're the ones fighting. David even said himself to Saul, he said, hey, I've slayed a lion and a bear, and I'm going to take out this giant. That's the human part. But David also said, the Lord delivered me out of the paw of the lion and out of the paw of the bear, and he'll deliver me out of the hand of this Philistine. That's the divine side. There's 2 tracks on a railroad. And Spurgeon says, man, a lot of people want to pull onto one of those rails. But he says, look, they're both equally true. Make it plain to yourself. He says, when I preach, man, I want to prepare and study as if the success of the sermon depends on me. But that when I'm done, I'm able to trust God as much as if I had done nothing at all. And the same view should be taken in your life, in your service for God. And even as an artist, when you write, take it so seriously that the success of it depends upon whether you can pull it off or not. Work with all your might as if you did it all. And then equally remember, hey, it's God that works in you, both to will and to do his good pleasure. How's that giant going to be killed? By God, says one person. True, but not without David. And by David killed Goliath. Some people say true, but not without God. And that's how I want my songs to be. The truth is, I feel like David, look, I can take out that lion. I can take out that bear. I can kill that giant. I can write really good stuff. But that's not arrogance. That's confidence that comes from my experience of knowing that God meets me right in the mess. Or songs out the time, I can't figure out things. I can't get things to work. That boom, his revelation happens. And so I always will say, it's God. There's nothing short of a miracle. God does this stuff through me as an artist. Spurgeon kind of makes fun of these people that he calls these idle night birds hooting at our working for the Lord. These lazy bones that say, well, God will do his own work. And then they look at the softest pillow they can find and put it under their heads and say, oh, God's will be done. God will be glorified. That's all nice, fine talk, but it prevents you from being of any use at all in the world. David doesn't just wait for God to do his will. He steps forward and says, I'm going to slay that freaking giant right now, today. He doesn't hesitate. And why should we hesitate? I hear this so many times from people. I've got a calling in my life and God will make it happen. God will put the right people. I'm just hanging out here. And I'm like, how many songs have you written this year? 2? I'm like, what are you doing? What are you talking about? Why are you sitting idly by, twiddling your thumbs, and call that faith? No, faith is protecting the very sheep that you have. Those gifts that you have, you got to protect them. You got to fight for them because there's things that are going to want to attack you. Go and write some songs. Go and get messy. Go kill those lions today. Destroy those bears. Rage against the things that are raging against you. Fight for intimacy. The lions, the bears, the giants, these are things that are opposed to your intimate connection with God. Slay them. Open up your expression towards a deep longing for God, a burning desire, like David wrote, one thing that I'm seeking. Now, if you've been following along this podcast, you might have noticed that I didn't mention the ache yet. So what does this have to do with the ache, right? This season is about the tension, the longing, the pain. What we find is when we get vulnerable, if we're really honest with ourselves, it's an ache for intimacy, to be known fully and to know another fully. David was vulnerable enough. He was open enough to pen some of the most heart-wrenching desires and longings ever written. And what he did was tap into the very heart of God. The revelation is that God deeply desires intimacy with us. He's not passive. He's not like, whatever. And what's interesting about this song is that this whole song was written from God's perspective. This is not David speaking to the Lord. This is God speaking to his servant, calling him towards intimacy, keeping him close through all the seasons, through all the hardships. Many people run away, David, but don't you be like that. So this bridge is like God saying, pull me closer to you. And David responds with, pull me closer to you, God. It's this flip. It's this dance. It's the same thing that happened on Convince You. Remember the song with Jacob wrestling where he says, I'm not going to let you go unless you bless me. And we find in a way it's God singing the same thing to us. You're going to find this a lot in songs. When you connect God's heart with our deepest longings, we realize, man, we're saying the same thing. A lot of songwriters ask me, is it okay to write from God's perspective? Like, is that all right? Yeah. I mean, writing from God's perspective isn't always easy, but it's so worth it. Like it'll change you. It requires courage and your willingness to get outside of yourself. But as an artist, man, definitely get comfortable imagining from God's perspective. As we listen to this song, I want to invite you right now to a new space. Put your headphones on, silence your phone, put away competing distractions, soak in the lyrics and be nourished. As always, I'm extremely grateful you're drinking this in. It's a wild one, and I think you'll like it. And I pray it touches you as it has touched me. Blessings.